Whitehorse Historical Society presents Remembering 1950s School Days and Other Activities. The post-war baby boom led to large classes in the 1950s. The average primary school class size was around 40 compared to a current average of 22. These grade photos show 47 pupils in Grade 1C at Bennettswood Primary in 1952 and 39 pupils in Grade 1C at Blackburn Primary School in 1954. As there was not a lot of preschool activity such as kindergarten and playgroups, starting school often came as a huge shock. One day kids were at home with mum and their younger siblings, and the next day they were in a room full of children, many of whom they did not know, and a teacher who expected them to sit quietly with no talking and do as they were told. First day nerves for mums and tears for kids was the norm. Anyone who attended school in the 1950s in Victoria is likely to be able to recite lines from John and Betty, such as, "This is John and this is Betty. John can jump, Betty can jump." This was the first reader, and there were two other readers in the series starring John and Betty, Playmates and Holidays. The first weeks of school were taken up with learning what the letters of the alphabet looked like and the sounds they made. They would also learn how to count and to write numbers. In the very early 50s, slates were still being used in the lower grades. However, pencil and paper soon became the norm. By grade 2 or 3, kids would progress to pens with nibs, which were dipped into ink wells fitted in the desks. Each morning the ink monitors would make up a big jug of ink using ink powder and water. This was placed in bottles with a rubber pourer, and ink wells were either filled in a tray and then placed into the hole in each desk, or, in some cases, filled whilst the ink wells remained in the desk, which was more perilous. In later years, students progressed to fountain pens that contained their own ink. The school curriculum was less crammed than it is today. The main subjects in early school years were English, arithmetic, history and geography. Much attention was given to learning to write cursively with a dip pen, learning timetables by rote, and doing mental arithmetic, or sums, quickly. Spelling lists and timetables were set as homework. Kids were not driven to school in the 50s. They either walked, rode a bike, or caught an early form of public transport, such as the Grenda's bus shown here. For some it was a bit of an ordeal, while others saw the journey to school each day as more of an adventure. Ask any baby boomer what they remember about their school days, and inevitably the answer will be the school milk program. Free school milk was introduced by the Menzies government in 1951 and discontinued under the Whitlam government in 1973. Most will recall the temperature of the milk, as it was often warm by recess time when the milk was drunk, because it had been delivered early in the morning and was not refrigerated. School assembly was held once a week. Kids had to stand lined up and to attention, and on the signal, the flag would be run up the flagpole. The boys would salute and the girls stand to attention. Then they would recite the oath. "I love God and my country, I honour the flag, I will serve the Queen and cheerfully obey my parents, teachers and the law." The ceremony ended with singing "God Save the Queen," and each grade then marched into their classrooms accompanied by the school band, if there was one. There was a strong emphasis on discipline, and teachers were always addressed as Sir or Miss. There were real consequences when kids were naughty. The cane, strap or ruler was something to be feared. Other punishments consisted of a teacher throwing chalk or a duster at unruly class members. Such acts of discipline today would be regarded as a criminal offence. Detention and writing lines were also common punishments. In some schools, the shelter shed was where kids ate their lunch every day before the bell rang to release them to go and play with their friends. In other schools, it was only used for rainy or extremely hot days. In most schools, there were separate girls' and boys' shelter sheds. After kids finished eating their lunch, or swapping it for something better, the bell would ring and it was off to play with their friends until the end of lunchtime. Handball, footy and cricket were popular with boys and required no teacher input into their organisation. There were also monkey bars, swings, climbing frames and fierce games of marbles happening in the playground. Games such as Hoppo Bumpo and British Bulldog were popular. However, both of these games are now banned. Favourite lunchtime games for girls were skipping, string games like Cat's Cradle, and oranges and lemons. It is interesting that an English game dating from the 1740s was still being played in schoolyards over 200 years and 17,000 kilometres from when and where it was invented. The girls chant, "Oranges and lemons, say the bells of St. Clements, you owe me 5 farthings, say the bells of St. Martin's," etc., etc., naming the bells of 6 London churches. Organised team sports for boys were mostly Australian rules footy in winter and cricket in summer. There were inter-school and state competitions, and being the premiers was a great thrill. The main team sport played by girls was women's basketball, which was renamed as netball in 1970. Other sports commonly played were tunnelball, rounders, hockey and crossball. Buying lunch at the tuck shop was an exception rather than the rule, as most families were living off one income. If you ordered it from the school tuck shop, you would write your order on a brown paper bag and a lunch monitor would take them down to the tuck shop so your order would be ready in time for lunch. Tuck shops were often staffed by parent volunteers, and whatever money was made was used to purchase school equipment such as slide projectors, tape recorders and other teaching materials. Your everyday lunch was a sandwich wrapped in greaseproof paper together with a piece of fruit and, if you were very lucky, a biscuit or a piece of homemade cake. The school banking program was introduced in the early 1900s and was designed to encourage regular savings behaviour. Each school had a specific banking day where pupils would bring their money to bank and teachers performed the banking duties. Outside of school, there were many other group activities available to kids. Scouting and guiding were very important activities in the 1950s. In Australia, Boy Scouts had approximately 131,000 youth members and Girl Guides had approximately 30,000 youth members. Scouting is still the largest youth development organisation in Australia and the world. Scouts learnt about camping, tents, how to start a fire, knots, building rafts and identifying trees. At group camps, kids chopped their own wood and cooked their own food on campfires. In the 50s, the Scouts undertook door-to-door activities such as Bob a Job during Scout Week and bottle collecting. Both of these activities are now banned due to safety issues. Every Scout receives a membership certificate when they join, and the Scout Promise is printed on this certificate. The Scout belt buckle shown displays the Scout motto, "Be Prepared," on the edge of the buckle and the Scout emblem, the fleur-de-lis, on the middle of the buckle. Badges are an integral part of both scouting and guiding, and the middle photo shows a cub and a brownie comparing their badges. Scouts wore their achievement badges sewn onto their uniform, and guides usually had their badges sewn on a sash. During the 1950s, Girl Guides in Australia were organised into sections based on age. These were Brownies for girls aged 7 to 10, Guides for girls aged 10 to 14, Ranger Guides for girls aged 14 to 18. The guide recognition system is the reward or badge system. The membership certificates shown were provided by Judith, who is a current Whitehorse Historical Society member. Her Brownie certificate is dated 1955 and her Guide certificate is dated 1959. These test cards and diary from 1959 hold many treasured memories for Judith. The Nunawading Youth Club was established in 1944 by local policeman Constable Bill Lucas. It is believed that his mission was to keep the local youth busy with sport activities because it kept them off the streets and out of trouble. The club served the community with a broad range of sports such as netball, judo, marching girls, baton twirling, cricket, and boys and girls gymnastics. The club changed its name to the Nunawading Gymnastics and Sports Club in 1998 and is still operating today. Many churches such as St Luke's, Vermont also ran youth groups. Football Club Junior Football was developed in the 1950s and the Mitcham Junior Football team was formed from members of the Nunawading Youth Club team. Marching was a competitive sport for girls that originated in New Zealand in the 1930s but became popular in Australia in the 1950s. Many uniforms were military in style with lots of tartan, buttons and epaulets. Originally, competition teams were only for adults. However, in the early 50s, junior teams, 12 to 15, were able to compete. In addition to competitions, the girls performed at football matches, parades, carnivals and fetes. The local church was very much part of people's lives in the 1950s. Kids went to Sunday school every week from an early age, and most families attended church services. The highlight of the Sunday school year was the Sunday school picnic. Whitehorse Historical Society hopes you have enjoyed this look back at 1950s school days and other activities. And if you would like to learn more, we encourage you to view our other presentation. Being a Kid in the 50s.